Hey guys, it's TheFrXion here, or TheFrXion181, however you want to call me. I don't really care. A very quick thing before we go to the video. I want to shout out some other YouTube channels because every single time I look into the World of Tanks YouTube sphere, there are a lot of little channels out there that have a lot of great content, and I think that they definitely deserve some attention. And I obviously don't have a lot of viewers myself, but the 727 subscribers out there. If you're interested in more World of Tanks content, I'm going to try to find a little channel. And for the next couple of days, whenever I'm making a video, I'm just shouting out some names out here. There's Tonster181g. I'm going to put the link in the channel description below, or in the comment section below. And you can find some very cool gameplays with nice commentary on there. If you're interested in more World of Tanks coverage, Tonster has a lot of ace tanker gameplays. Definitely check out his T-34-3 ace tanker over here. That one is quite nice. And yeah, just check them out, and hopefully you guys enjoy. And let's move on to the video. Hey guys, it's TheFrXion here, Tank12, having called me. I don't really care. Welcome back to World of Tanks, where we're today taking a look at the Primo Victoria or the Stridswagen 81. Because now, obviously, I don't own a Stridswagen 81, but they're the same tank. There's no difference between these two vehicles except for the look of the Primo Victoria, because the Primo Victoria was a tank that they released with the Sabaton crew. On the other hand, the Stridswagen 81 is the Swedish Tier 8 premium medium tank, which does not have a skin, and thus you can pretty much take whatever skin you want to have on it and put it on the vehicle. It will set you back 8,000 bonds, and today in this video we want to talk about the vehicle and see if it's worth the 8,000 bonds for you. I think it's probably time in the near future to make a bit of a ranking of these bond vehicles, because we have talked about quite a few bond tanks and there are quite some good options out there, so that you can have a little bit of an idea what you could choose. But with the Stridswagen 81, if you want to have a medium tank at tier 8 in the bond shop and you don't want to buy it with premium currency, you can either get the M46 patent Korea, you can get the Stridswagen 81, you can get the Panzer 58 Mutz, which by the way is a really cool tank, but we're going to talk about that one later in another video probably, and the medium tank T-34-3 and this STG guard. I forgot that. I always forget the guard. But yeah, you have quite a few options. You have 4 tanks right here, so it's 5 medium tanks you can choose at tier 8, and all of them are quite different and quite special. There are some good ones out there as well. I think the weakest one is probably going to be the M46 patent Korea, and the T-34-3 is definitely a very nice little catch. But today we're going to talk about the Primo Victoria or the Stridswagen 81, and we're going to talk about the setup that I have, we're going to talk about the characteristics of the vehicle, and we're going to talk about how you play it and the best way to play it, and if it is worth the 8,000 bonds, because 8,000 bonds is quite a lot. Now, I just recently finished the ranked season, and I've gotten to the final stage, and I managed to get my 5,000 bonds again, because I spent 20,000 bonds for the Concept 1B, which I will probably make a video on a bit later, but today we're just going to talk about the Primo Victoria or the Stridswagen 81. To not get confused, they're basically the same tank. You can just see that the Primo Victoria has a very cool skin and the Sabaton crew inside of it. Unfortunately, it does not play the song when you're driving it, but I think it gets pretty close to it. So let's take a look at the Primo Victoria or the Stridswagen 81, and what you can see immediately is it's basically just a Centurion, a British Centurion. I don't think it's the Mark 1. It's a later configuration with let me see, the 84mm cannon. I'm not sure. I think it's the same one as on the British Tech 3. Let me check real fast to get it right. Not to tell you guys like trash. And it's supposed to be a 20-pounder, so at least like characteristics wise or stats wise, it's the same. 226 millimeters of penetration. And yeah, let's jump right in. So your average damage is quite low, 230 damage per shot. Now that is because your caliber is not greater than 84 millimeters, and that basically is already big, a very big downside if we are honest in the year 2022, because in World of Tanks the alpha of 240 is very outdated, even for tier 8 premium tanks, especially for tier 8 premium tanks. 240 alpha damage is very outdated. That is because with the RNG, the way that the game works, you can have a minus 25% damage output, and you can drop below 200 damage if you have a very bad roll. You can also go above 230 damage plus 25%, but still the average damage output is not good enough. 230 is really on the lowest end, and there's a reason why a lot of players kind of steer away from low alpha dealing tanks, because they don't really have a lot of place in the game anymore. They usually do have quite an impressive rate of fire, but I think players much rather tend to have less rate of fire and a higher alpha damage. That gives them kind of a feeling of security that even if you hit once, you usually do about 2 or 3 times the damage in a T-34-3 than you would do with the Primo Victoria if you hit once or twice. But it does have very good penetration for a tier 8 premium medium tank. 226 millimeters of penetration. If we check the ammo rounds or the ammunition on the vehicle right now, you can also see that the shell velocity is quite impressive. 1,300 meters per second. And you can see that's the max damage you can do, 288. That's the least damage you can do. The worst roll, 172. I think I had one of those rolls prior. Then you have the premium shells, which have 258 millimeters of penetration and 1,400 meters per second shell velocity. Now the premium shells, they do not really have that great of a pen increase, because you're already at 226. So using the premium shells is not really that beneficial. It does give you a bit of an edge, but not too much when you're going up against tier 10 tanks. 258 millimeters of penetration is about on par with a standard tier 8 heavy tank, but when you have to hit like a tier 10 vehicle that has a lot of armor, well, 258 is not going to get you very far. But still, I guess having, about 32 millimeters more pen, still going to be a nice thing. Your high explosive shell that you're running, they only have 42 millimeters of penetration. Shell velocity is quite atrocious, 600 meters per second. They do give you up to 350 damage though if you do penetrate someone, but still, they're really not worth it, to be fair. And I'm running way too many on them on the vehicle right there. Now, the rate of fire on the vehicle is actually not that impressive. 8.72 rounds per minute. That's about a reload time of 6.88 seconds for a single shot. And the gun traverse is also not the best. 39.25 degrees per second. That means your turret is not going to be turning as quickly as some other light or medium tanks. And I think that is something that you could improve with the right equipment, or that definitely should be looked into. What you do have is 10 degrees of gun depression. That is quite nice. On a ridgeline, this is still a Centurion, you're going to be doing quite nice, because you do have 10 degrees of gun depression, and you do have a very nice gun that in its best time can get you a lot of damage, because the rate of fire is not the worst. It's also not the best because it's kind of weird. For that caliber, you would expect more DPM, but still you can make it work. And because you have 226 millimeters of penetration, and the aim time and the dispersion are both very good, this is a tank that is able to snipe at longer distances and be able to pick those tanks apart piece by piece. Now, I think it's quite weird that the DPM is this low, 2000. If I do compare it to the T-34-3, for example, it's on the same level basically, but the T-34 definitely has just more alpha. and the T-34-3 doesn't even have the crew on it. But that's probably also to do with the fact that I'm running a Gunrunner Class 1 on it. But still, I think that the 2000 DPM is it's a bit weird if you think about it, because the 230 alpha that you have on the vehicle is just not that great. So maybe you could increase it even more with a premium consumable, for example, with what are they eating here? Coffee with cinnamon buns. If you put that on this tank, you can see that the DPM goes up by a little bit, and then maybe there's also other things that you could use as equipment. You can get that higher because you want to have the DPM when you're playing your tank. Now, hit points wise, this vehicle does have quite a lot of hit points for a medium tank, 1450 at tier 8. Hull armor is very, very basic, 76 at the front, 51 on the side, 38 on the rear. But on the turret, once more, it is a Centurion, so it means that the Centurion does have some very nice armor on its turret. 254 millimeters of penetration, 254 millimeters of armor, 89 on the side, 89 on the rear. One of the biggest downsides, though, on a Centurion is just that it's very flat. So these parts right here next to the gun mantlet, very easy to take care of, and also the kind of the forehead is quite flat with heat shells, very easy to penetrate. So your armor on the turret, especially in close quarter engagement, is not going to last very long because players will be firing premium shells at your face. So that's one of the big downsides that I see. Other than that, I think the armor is quite decently rounded if you're hiding the lower plate and the upper plate. Other than that, if they do find your hull armor, they're going to take care of you very, very quickly because this tank just doesn't really have any hull armor. That's definitely where the T-34-3 does benefit. So this tank is not very good in close quarter combat unless it can hide its lower plate or upper plate as well. It weighs quite a bit, 53 tons. Its engine power is quite nice, 990 horsepower. It's I think 900 because I'm running the turbocharger class 1 on it. And I highly suggest that you do run the turbocharger class 1. You could obviously also run the improved rotation mechanism, which would give you plus 12%, 12.5% better gun traverse and hull traverse, which is something you might need on this tank because the traverse speed of the vehicle is a bit lacking with 42.46. That is with a lot of the benefits that we already have with the crew skills and the consumables. And your top speed is only 50 kilometers per hour when you're running no turbocharger. With the turbocharger, you have the 55 kilometers per hour, and you get a specific power to weight ratio of up to 19.32. Now that's something that I really would suggest you getting because you want to get as fast as you can with this thing because it's supposed to be a very good all-rounder, but it doesn't really do anything very good. So you are kind of in a tank that is decent enough to work with any kind of player, but it's not good enough to be like exceptional in any kind of area. So that's how you need to specialize a little bit. You need to look what is important to you, and then you can specialize your tank towards your liking with the equipment and with the field modifications. Concealment wise, it's quite a large tank, so it doesn't have the best concealment. You can see that in the stats, 435 points. So your stationary vehicle and your moving vehicle, they're going to be spotted quite easily for a medium tank, but your spotting is very, very good. Now this is one thing that the British did right, that is the view range. This vehicle has 400 meters base view range. Now if you couple that with the right equipment, with the right training, you can get up to 461 meters view range. That is extremely, extremely nice to have because in the end you can be a lot more independent when you're playing this tank. You can spot for yourself, you can see what is coming towards you, you can spot for your team. That is a really nice feat to have. 461 meters view range is great. So you don't really need to specialize your tank on scouting. You could add a survivability tab and you can just go and add the vents on top of that. You get like 7.5%, you get a 2.5% bonus, or you could, maybe even run some different equipment, for example, improved hardening, increasing your survivability even more, and thus giving yourself a better chance of surviving engagements. You could play this tank a bit differently if you want to. But in the end, it still comes down to what you prefer when you're playing the game. Now, with the field modifications, with the equipment, with all the systems, you can actually kind of make your tank play the way you want it to play. But with the Primo Victoria or the Studianzki, it's already a good basis. It's a good all-round tank that just doesn't really shine in any kind of particular area. Where you can compare it to the T-34-3, where the T-34-3 is a really excellent tank in close quarter combat. It will not be capable at longer ranges. Its armor is really just designed for those close quarter engagements, and the Primo Victoria or the Studianzki, they don't really hold up if they have to expose other parts than just their turret. But still, I think there's a tank to be had, especially for players that prefer vehicles that are good all-rounders, and I think in the gameplay we will definitely look into that a bit more. So let's jump into some gameplay, and then we can have a final verdict at the end and see what the right equipment is, maybe for your playstyle, and we can talk about the ups and downs and if I would pick it up or not, and which player probably would be the best suited for this one. Okay, so for the gameplay today, I have decided to take one more on the map Studianzki. I don't even know why, but this map somehow always does work out quite favorably for me when I'm playing World of Tanks, and somehow I always get this map, and somehow the matches are quite entertaining and they're quite good. I think it mainly has to do with the fact that this map is pretty much it kind of allows all vehicle types to have at least a little bit of a place on the map where they can be most effective. So we have the north, the A and B line, where medium tanks and light tanks can have quite a bit of impact on the side of the little factory at C5 and 6, and then you have the little town at H and on the J line, where a lot of vehicles go to slug it out. So it's a tier 8 match only, and I think this one will show you quite nicely the capability of this tank and the limitations of the vehicle as well. So let me just real fast take a look at the statistics of the tank once more, so we can go a bit deeper into the Strv 81. One thing that I have forgotten to mention in this video is that the Sabaton tank, the Primo Victoria that I'm currently driving, is a bit different from the Strv 81. Just very little. It has nothing to do with the stats. It has to do with the crew members in this vehicle. The Primo Victoria has 5 crew members instead of 4, because there is like 5 members on the band, so that's why they have 5 crew members. And on the Strv 81 you have 4, so there's no big difference, because I think the max amount of crew members you have on a Swedish medium tank is 4, so you don't need any more than that. It's just that Sabaton crew is on the Primo Victoria and it's not on the Strv 81. That's very important to note. So let's take a minute to see what we're doing right here. So I want to move over here to assist the Senlac. I know that with my tank, if I do go into the bushes, I might not have the best camo rating, but I'll have enough camo rating to stay hidden from the enemy HWK-30 if I play it right. That's exactly what I want to do, because I've basically pushed everything on this tank to give me the max amount of view range. It being a Centurion gives you 400 meters base view range. At tier 8 for a medium tank, that is very, very good. So you don't really need to have any kind of equipment to push the view range anymore. You can just use maybe food, or you can use the right skills. But I always like to have the maximum amount of view range that I can have, just in case that I need to spot something. So right there we have a 122 TM, a tank that we cannot penetrate unless we hit the cupola on top or we hit the lower plate. And our ELC even 90 is getting punished because he was not in a bush, but he was just driving out there. Because we have very good spotting, we were able to spot the 122 TM and get that assistance damage. I'm not sure who hit him, must have been artillery, I guess. and that's what you want to do. With the Centurion, you're not always going to be able to do damage, because this tank does not fare very well once spotted. But what you can do with this thing is you can always spot. When you're spotting, you can get assistance damage by artillery. That assistance damage can be very, very helpful in you getting enough damage to get to the next marks of excellence, or to just get credits and experience. Now we can see there's a bit of trouble brewing. We have a Skoda T56, and right there we penetrate his frontal plate, 226 millimeters of penetration with the APCR shell. The rate of fire is a bit more than 8 rounds per minute, so you don't have the best DPM, but I think your DPM is good enough. But what you can see right there is that your armor, your HP, is not going to last you a very long time, because as soon as artillery is on you, as soon as you get hit by a heat shell, by the 122 TM, you lose quite a bit of HP. But still, we managed to put one shell into the IS-3, set him on fire. He has an automatic fire extinguisher. Somebody knocks him out since we tracked him, and now we're doing the same to the Skoda T56, and that's a very nice thing to have when you are playing a medium tank, having the 226 millimeters of penetration with the APCR shell. You don't need any premium rounds, and you can see that artillery is extremely adamant on taking us out. This is like the 4th or 5th artillery round trying to hit us. I think another one is coming in just a second. But you can see with the mobility that we didn't really have to display so far, we were still able to get into this position, and we were able to hold our ground. We haven't really bounced anything, because the turret is the strongest part of armor that you have in this vehicle. So if you do not get shot at the turret, most of the time people will go right through your hull, since it's only 76 millimeters thick at the front. I still think this is a fairly nice rounded tank. It has a lot of good things, and I think its pros probably outweigh its cons a lot more, because I still like to play it, even though it is probably not the most combat effective tank. It doesn't have the best DPM, it doesn't have the best mobility, it doesn't have the best armor, but it has a little bit of everything. So you can basically use this as a tank of, like a, what do you call it? You call it like a vehicle of all perks, or I'm not really sure what it's called, but it is pretty effective in everyone's hands, but it doesn't really excel in any kind of direction. But I think that's quite nice still, because in this match right now, what we need is we need some mobility to get there, we need some HP, we need some armor, and we need enough penetration to be able to deal with those heavy tanks that are still sitting somewhere at the base of the map, and are trying to, trying to kill our heavy tanks that are currently moving in on the enemy cap. Having that and having the spotting, the view range, is also a very nice thing, a nice added bonus. Where somebody spots the object 274A, and we spotted the T-32. Now the aim time is actually not the best. It's 2.3 seconds, so it still takes a bit. The dispersion of 0.33 sometimes feels like it doesn't really have the best aim. It doesn't have the best accuracy. The ammo capacity with 65 rounds in your vehicle, on the other hand, is very nice. You can basically be assured that you do not run out of ammunition on this vehicle, and if you do run out of ammunition, you must have had a really good game, because this tank does not really run out of ammunition very quickly. And if we take a look at the APCR shells, 1,300 meters shell velocity on the standard APCR shells, and 1,400 on the premium, and 258 millimeters of penetration if you really need to go through something very heavily armored. But I think if you're playing this tank, one of probably the key features that is really important for a premium vehicle is that it has enough base pen so that you don't have to constantly utilize premium shells to stay combat effective. And I think that's exactly what you're getting with the Stridswagen 81 or the Primo Victoria. These tanks, they will always be able to penetrate most of the tanks at tier 8, as long as it's not a IS-4 or the K2, which is a IS-4 coming at tier 8 as a premium tank. this vehicle is going to be able to still manage to penetrate most of the tanks. Now, one of the major drawbacks still is its low alpha damage. You can see 200 damage right there, 202 for a tier 8 medium tank. That's not a very great number, but the rate of fire is, in my opinion, decent enough to still allow you to, really harass these guys when you find them out in the open. It's not as fast as maybe some other Soviet tanks or some American medium tanks, but I still think that the balance between penetration, rate of fire, and gun handling is a very nice thing on the TheFrXion and the Primo Victoria. So far we've been able to do quite a bit of damage right here. We just hit a hot instead of the TheFrXion S1, and we still are going to be able to finish this match off with over 3,600 damage and 1,324 damage assisted. And I think that's a very nice little combination to have when you're playing this tank, because in a hull down position this thing is going to be great. If it's out in the open, it's not going to be faring too well, since you're going to have a bit of a problem with engaging other medium tanks that have better armor than you. So I would really suggest that you should try to get this vehicle in a hull down position where you can hide the hull from all the incoming fire. But I still think the TheFrXion 81 and the Primo Victoria are quite capable in themselves in combat situations. It's just that they don't really excel in any kind of way. But we're gonna go right ahead and talk about the final verdict in a second, and then we're gonna finish the video off. I'll see you guys in just a second. So let's find out if the Primo Victoria is worth it for you. Now, the Primo Victoria is a tank, or the TheFrXion 81, since you guys will be picking up the TheFrXion 81. Unfortunately, why does it not let me into the store? Right there we go. So the TheFrXion 81 is a tank that will set you back 8,000 bonds. That is quite a bit of bonds that you have to spend for a medium tank. I think this is a tank that is really, really well rounded. It has basically no extreme flaws, doesn't have any real area where it excels at. It does everything good, but nothing exceptionally well. I think this tank will work for a lot of players that just want a tank that is reliable, that doesn't have any special gimmicks, any special features. I think this tank will definitely be a workhorse that will work for you. It can do very well on a ridgeline. You have decent enough penetration that you don't have to utilize premium ammunition very often. Your aim time, your dispersion is all decent enough that you don't really need to utilize too much equipment in that area. And you will survive enough if you can stay hidden, or at least keep your lower plate and upper plate hidden from the enemy. Now, that being said, it's not going to be the fastest one. It's not going to have the best survivability of any medium tank out there. It's not going to have the best alpha damage. This is something that is really important. The question is, are you willing to play a tank that only has 230 alpha per shot? That is something that in the year 2022, a lot of World Tanks players are not willing to do. If you're not really willing to do 230 damage per shot, because that's not a lot, and if you do not pen, well, you'll have to reload and then you fire again, and instead of maybe doing 390 and then another 390, you might just do 400 damage in, I don't know, a minute, because you're not really able to penetrate the tank, or something is happening and you hit the tracks and it's really weird. Then your average damage is not going to be very helpful. So that's one thing to consider. At least you have very, very nice view range. 400 meters base view range is really good. So I think you can work this tank very, very nicely if you're willing to play a tank that has decent DPM but not the best DPM, and where the alpha damage is not that important to you. Now, if we go over to the store and you might want something at tier 8, a premium tank that has more alpha, there are other options available. There's the T-34-3, that is still one of my favorites, and then there's the STG Guard. The STG Guard also has better Alpha. It's a bit less mobile than the T-34-3, but it also has some other strong suits. It's quite accurate. It's a good medium to maybe even long distance sniper, and those are the choices that you have at tier 8 if you want more alpha. There's also the M46 patent carrier, which I would really not suggest getting because that thing is not that good, and the Panzer 58 Muts, which also does not have the best alpha damage. But I think the Stridswagen would definitely be one of the 3 tanks that I would get out of the mediums. I would get the T-34-3, then I would get the STG Guard as well probably, and then I would probably get the Stridswagen 81 to have one of those vehicles that is a fairly good all-rounder. And that's basically what the Primo Victoria is in the Stridswagen 81. You will not be disappointed, you will not be surprised. It's a decent tank that will definitely work well enough to allow you to get some damage and get some spotted damage as well. But you should not be expecting the fastest or the most powerful gun on this vehicle. But I still think it's a very good workhorse to have around if you want to do some, just some credit grinding, and you just want to have something that's straightforward, that works in every kind of direction, and is very well evened out and balanced out. Then this is definitely a very good choice, a very good pick, and worth the 8,000 bonds. But other than that, if you want something that's specialized as a real medium tank, really aggressive with the mobility, I would probably rather go for the T-34-3. So that was my review. Hopefully you guys agree, or if you do not agree, obviously write it in the comment section below. I'll see you guys on the next video. Until then, have a good one. Peace out.